Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick and Jeff Lasseter. Visit us at ihatecritics.net, everyone's a critic podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle's CriticsPod. Listen to us at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all your podcatchers. But please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. Give us a 5-star review. We'll read it on the air. And then patreon.com/criticspod is the best way to help support the podcast. And you can get some of our bonus episodes, including a Friday the 13th commentary track, some music reviews that Sean and I did, and a whole lot more. And then TeePublic, head over to ihatecritics.net, search our TeePublic link, or search CriticsPod over at teepublic.com. Jeez, I can't talk right now. I'm fighting back hiccups. All right, Sean, where can people find your music review or your movie reviews?
I do music too, but yeah, it's geeks.media, and the newest piece up of the archive blog is seanthemovies.blogspot.com for the old reviews, so you can find them and find me contradicting myself and that kind of thing. But the newest piece I just wrote that I'm incredibly proud of is a deep dive into the mysterious nature of the Coach YouTube channel, because somebody created a YouTube channel surrounding the TV series Coach. And so I decided to come up with a narrative about how someone would end up making a YouTube channel about the TV show Coach, because I find that to be incredibly bizarre.
I love Coach.
Was it you? Was this you? You did this?
Dude, I can barely do the podcast.
It's so weird. Somebody just uploading, they spent the last 8 months just uploading 8-minute clips of episodes of Coach and calling themselves official, like they're the official Coach channel. So weird.
That's hilarious. Funny side note, I used to have the DVD of season 1 of Coach, and we were selling it at a garage sale, and this girl who looked an awful lot like Craig T. Nelson bought it, and then she said she was his daughter.
Oh, wow.
And this is in Geneseo. So I don't know why she had a reason why she was coming through town. This is 12 years ago. I don't even remember exactly, but just for all you, I know he's not the most likable guy.
Shadow is inescapable.
Yes. Jeff, where can people find your art?
JeffLassiter.com. And if you're in the Chicago area, come to the Davis Theater on Saturday, where we're doing a Euro horror movie festival. I think it's 8 hours of Euro horror movies, including the classic Don't Torture a Duckling, which is just a bonkers movie that everybody should see on the big screen if they get the chance. So come and see me, buy my shit.
Awesome.
Please. I want to quit my job. I want to live in the lap of luxury that is the life of an artist. Yeah, it's hilarious, huh?
All right. All those links are in our show notes as well. Let's get right to it. There's no news to talk about, right? Just go straight to the movies, or sorry, I'm a little off this week.
Carol Locatel died. She was in a lot of movies. My favorite movie that she was in was Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. She played Ethel. She was really funny. Very, very nice lady if you met her at a convention. She was also in Sharky's Machine, where she used the same wig that she wore in Friday the 13th Part 5. She was in movies with everybody throughout the 70s and 80s. So
my only news is that I'm trying desperately to avoid any more reviews of Beau is Afraid. I don't want to know any more than I already know. I'm just stupid excited about this movie.
I didn't realize it was 3 hours long.
I'll take 4. I mean, give me whatever. It's
I'm
already
going to go to Chicago. And so Thursday night, I'm like, all right. I looked at the show times. I was like, oh, 7 o'clock. Why is it at 3 o'clock? Oh, because it's 3 hours long.
Yeah, I'm going to the 3.
I wish if I could take off another few hours from work, I would, but I've taken Friday off. So
Yeah, I'm hoping I need to get to the theater to see it. Right now I have a pretty packed weekend. My wife just volunteered me for after prom and all. So I'm not even around. Friday night I'm in Chicago at a concert, and Thursday, I don't know, unless they went to the 10 o'clock showing. I don't know if I can see it Thursday. So hopefully Sunday I can make time, but I've been excited about this more than anything in a long time. Only review I've read kind of shit on it, said it was up its own ass, but then followed that up with a shitty comment about Hereditary. So I'm like, oh yeah, you're one of those. So that made me feel better. All right. Let's get to this week, though, because that's next week. Mafia Mamma.
Mafia Mamma stars Toni Collette as a woman who inherits a mafia family. Because that's a normal thing. That's basically the premise and the idea, I guess, is that she's a woman whose grandfather ran a mafia family in Italy, and she inherits it, and she goes to his funeral and finds out that she's now a mafia don, and she has to pretend to be capable of running a mafia family. She's threatened by other mafia families because Italy and stereotypes and whatnot. And this movie was directed by Catherine Hardwicke, which blows my mind because Catherine Hardwicke's, even though she did Twilight and whatnot, she's done some trashy stuff, but she's still a very good director. And here she's just kind of just coasting on this autopilot plot, this concept of a woman inheriting a mafia family. And she's trying to pull off this incredibly tricky tone in a movie that she clearly doesn't care about. There is some seriously violent shit happening in this movie. One of the things that I wrote about in my review, the first thing I wrote about in my review is this moment where she is attacked and she's going to be, one of these guys trying to kill her, and she takes off her high heel and she jams it in his groin, and then she jams it in his eye socket, then jams it in his groin again, and then jams it in his eye socket again. And somebody comments later, everybody really thinks you're crazy because they found pieces of his scrotum in his eye socket. And it's this movie can't sustain that kind of comedy. It doesn't have the tone, it doesn't have the capability, because it also wants to be Eat, Pray, Love and How Stella Got Her Groove Back. I mean, another comparison I made was if you took the movie Girls Trip with Queen Latifah and then dropped that into the universe of Boys in the Hood, that's the tone they're trying to pull off with this. It's it's bizarre. It's truly just a complete and utter mess. And just Toni Collette is such a great actress, and she's so bad in this. And Monica Bellucci, you could just see where she's just trying to crawl out of the movie and keeps getting dragged back into it. It's really bad.
Yeah, I kind of held out hope just because of the cast, because they don't generally take on movies like this. So that was, or at least Toni Collette.
Well, I mean, Toni Collette has also starred alongside that woman from My Big Fat Greek Wedding in one of the worst movies ever made. So I mean, she'll do bad shit. She does some bad shit.
Well, but she doesn't tend to do super commercial bad shit, if that makes sense. I don't know. Anyway, you did forget King Ralph. Was it nothing like King Ralph?
It's nothing like King Ralph. Maybe comically, a couple characters are kind of fat, but I mean, beyond that, no. It's nothing like King Ralph.
Inherits the kingdom. Jeff, do you have any comments on this movie?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it because I had to go fucking see it.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm just going to a brief spoiler for my Renfield review. I thought tonally that was all over the place. This makes that look like a tight, taut thriller. Mm-hmm. This is just it's every 5 seconds Toni Collette is saying squirrel, and I really love Toni Collette. She is probably my top 5 favorite actors. What is going on with this movie though? It had to either be super broad comedy or drama thriller kind of stuff. If she said, I never saw The Godfather, it was she said it once, she said it 50 times. And
oh God, yeah.
I knew from the very beginning that her love interest was not who he said he was. I did think that he was a member of the crime family that she was up against, the Romanos, but I just was like, oh, that's she's gonna like they're gonna meet up, and all of a sudden they're gonna have to try to kill each other, and it was just. There were some laugh out loud funny bits in it, but not enough to sustain it as a 2-hour movie or an hour and 41 minutes. I counted. It was so predictable. Everything about it was so predictable, except I will give it this. I really, really thought that Monica Bellucci, I thought her character was setting up Toni Collette, and she was going to be the big bad in the movie. But it couldn't even sustain that, you know. Even up till towards the very end, you thought that was, you're alive, you know, she's alive, and oh yeah, because she's the big bad, and then she wasn't. I was like, well, then why would you bring Monica Bellucci into this movie if she's not going to be the big bad or have a dramatic turn
or have anything to do whatsoever?
Yeah, it was like you did not need her character at all. I mean, I thought, you know, oh, maybe she's the cousin or something, and she's this other douchebag's mom, because that's what I thought was going on for the first 15, 20 minutes that they were in Italy, but then it wasn't, and I was just like, well, what is the point? You know, she doesn't even need to be a character. You just have to have her two handlers, who I thought were good, but it was tonally, it was like a boomerang. Every 5 minutes, I was like, is this a comedy? Is it a Eat, Pray, Fuck? Or is it...
Yeah.
You know, I just didn't... It was everybody in this movie who's a good actor was totally wasted.
Yeah, no, and it's weird because like they keep doing this thing with Monica Bellucci's character where anytime they have to set up a meeting with the other family, she says she's not allowed to go, which automatically should be setting up for something, and then that doesn't pay off in any way at all. Like it's just another bad idea in a series of bad ideas. But there's another thing in this, and I want to get your perspective on this, Jeff, because I thought there was a little bit of queer baiting going on at one point where she's like laying in a hammock with Toni Collette, and I thought, is she trying to seduce her? What is happening here? And that goes nowhere as well.
Well, she lays it with her in the hammock, and then you find out about her prosthetic leg that is just, the fat is moving on her leg when she touches it. I mean, I was like, huh? That's an awfully good prosthetic. And then you find out, oh, it's supposed to be metal. Whatever. But then later on in the movie, when you think she's going to say, I'm the Donna of this family, of the Romanos, you think that's what's going to happen, but instead she's just like getting really up close and like she wants to make out with her. And Toni Collette seems into it, and it's just like they don't say it again. You know, nothing whatsoever comes of it.
No, nothing. Just
fucking weird.
Bizarre choices throughout. It's just a terrible film.
It's streamable, okay? You don't pay $12 to go see this movie, or 16 or whatever. It's fine if it's just like, oh, it's on Peacock. I guess, yeah, I'll put it on while I'm cooking dinner, or making wine or some shit. But
you're making dinner, maybe don't look at the scrotum eye socket scene. Just kind of maternal way during that one. All three movies that I saw this weekend had an incredible amount of gore, and that was so out of it didn't belong in this movie. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean the headshots. I mean, people getting shot, blood flying everywhere. Like, again, they're trying to pull off something tricky, and I almost kind of admired the idea that they would go really dark in terms of the humor. Like, I thought maybe there was going to be something there, but it doesn't. They don't actually finish that thought. They kind of introduce a lot of different items that they don't follow up on.
This movie is not going to survive as an R-rated movie. This is a PG-13 idea, or an R-rated, idea, but don't make it seem like it's a comedy, because it's not Bridesmaids.
No, make a PG-13 movie where she inherits the mafia. She makes them all go straight and be good citizens. Sometimes they have to get into mafia stuff and nearly kill somebody, but then she's like stopping them from killing people. Like, that's the more that's more true to the character. It's not nearly, you don't have to go to dark places that make no sense for a movie that also wants to be how Stella got her groove back.
Yeah, I don't need a close up of an eyeball rolling across the floor as she's walking out of. I don't need that for this movie. I was thinking this movie would have been what I thought it was, and I would have liked it more if it was more like a foul play with Goldie Hawn. You know, that kind of oh shit, what have I gotten myself into? That kind of fish out of water story, as opposed to a fish out of water who also knows how to murder a man with her high heels. In graphic detail. And you know me, I love gore. I love it, but I want it in a horror movie. I don't want it in a, a half sex comedy, half fish out of water story. It was so tonally weird.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought they were trying to go for, like, what could we do to make this R-rated so people think it's Bridesmaids?
Anything else on Mafia Mamma?
I say don't bother. Jeff is being incredibly kind.
I'm saying do a director's cut and take out all the gore and throw it on Peacock, and I would love it. I probably would love it if it was like totally not all over the place, because I like Toni Collette and I like stupid comedies, but here we are.
The Pope's Exorcist.
The Pope's Exorcist stars Russell Crowe as the Pope's Exorcist. He's literally that. Father Amorth. He works directly for the Pope.
Review over.
Franco Nero is the Pope, and Russell Crowe is he's like a cop who plays by his own rules, but he's also he's an exorcist and not a cop. Somehow they've taken every cop movie trope and thrown it at a priest who works as an exorcist. So like, he gets pulled in front of like an internal affairs board that's like investigating him. He gets a new rookie partner who doesn't know what he's doing. It's just totally bizarre. And it just tickled me every time they came up with some new twist on the cop genre in this Exorcist movie. Was just adorable. Like, the whole thing boils down to him uncovering corruption in the church from the Spanish Inquisition, but it was really the devil that did it. Like, oh my God, it was so funny. But like, I knew this movie was going to be absolutely brilliant the minute that I saw Russell Crowe on a Vespa. Like, they just don't care. They don't care how this looks. He's on a scooter the entire movie, and I'm just like, this is so funny. It just reminded me of like late period Orson Welles. Like, he's got so much dignity, and then he's on a little scooter. This very grave, serious man on a scooter, and then he's got to go he's got this big case, and he's going to have to go outside the rules of the law to solve it, and then figure out the name of the demon so they can get rid of the demon. The family's living in an abbey in Spain, and they've got a demon in the basement in the Spanish Inquisition and all that. Now, who cares? Who cares? Russell Crowe is having such a delightful time being this character. He's so deeply invested in this and giving it all of his Russell Crowe-ness that I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I go for it, man. Be you. Enjoy this. I had a great time. This movie's terrible. I gotta state, it's a bad movie. But it's bad in such great, fun, exciting ways that I can't resist it.
Yeah. I think it's elevated by having Russell Crowe play this character. I was like, wait a minute. First of all, he looks so much like Rod Steiger in like the Amityville Horror now. Like, that's it. I a couple of times I was like, wow, he looks so much like Rod Steiger now. Daniel Zavato, who I didn't recognize in this movie because I've only ever seen him play kind of scruffy, and I've never saw Penny Dreadful or whatever. He's eating up that scenery too. It's like they got together and they were like, you know what? This is a stupid, like, Conjuring kind of movie. Let's just have fun with it, and let's just do whatever the fuck we want. And when you said you loved it, I was like, what, Sean? Like, a religious horror movie? And I'm not a believer, so I don't. Well, so I'm like, okay, I I'm not a believer, so this kind of stuff is not scary to me. But based on the performances, I really enjoyed it. I thought the kid who plays Henry, Peter D'Souza Fayoni, I think his name is. Mm-hmm. I thought he was really good. He's got that weird kind of big-eyed look. So as soon as you see him on screen, it's like, oh, he's gonna fucking.
He's gonna say fuck really loud.
A lot, yeah. This is the tone that Mafia Mamma would have like. It's like we're not taking ourselves too seriously.
It's totally consistent. Yes.
Yes. This movie is ridiculous, but we are not taking it so seriously that we're not going to have fun with it. I enjoyed the fact that it wasn't just about this possessed kid. Mm-hmm. I really thought, I'm like, okay, it's another Exorcist 2 ripoff, but it really wasn't. It was fun. It was dumb. The fact that it was quote unquote based on a real person. Like, okay, sure, Jan. Just his whole demeanor in the movie, and that kind of like, I'm too cool for school, and I will see this again.
I want to see it tomorrow. Like that's how much fun I had with this movie. It's so much fun, and it's ironic fun, but it's also genuine fun because Russell Crowe is having a great time doing this. Like you can sense that even he has a sense of humor about this. He's being very serious, treating the material with gravitas, but he's also he's making bird noises at nuns as they go by, riding his little Vespa scooter so adorably. Like he's having a great time doing this. Like I feel like that stuff was intentional to the point where I tweeted out my review today, and the producer saw the title, which basically says this is a fun bad movie, and he liked my tweet. Yeah, it is a fun bad movie. You're right.
Nice. Did you see it, Bob?
Yeah, because Sean said it was amazing.
Uh-oh.
Well, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I didn't have as much fun because I'm trying to find what he was seeing in it, and I was like, I'm like, this is just a studio exorcism movie with Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe does elevate it. You're 100% right, and the tone's right on. But at the end of the day, it's just like a straight ahead commercial Exorcist movie, but you are right. Russell Crowe he's funny in it. At one point, my wife looks over to me during it and says, we have a friend named Ian, and she says he kind of reminds me of Ian. And the rest of the movie, I started to have more fun because he did. Just kind of a slightly overweight guy who just makes weird choices, which is what Russell Crowe, the person, was doing. But I don't know. It was... I kept I don't know. I was looking for something there that I was looking in the wrong direction. I guess I wasn't thinking fun bad. I was thinking Hereditary, and I'm like, this is nowhere near that.
No.
I thought I'm gonna say I kind of thought that too when we were all chatting, and he said, "Oh, it was I loved it," and I was like, "Huh." So I started watching it, and I'm like, I don't get it until he got to the house, and then I kind of got the tone of it, and I was like, oh, this is not just like an Insidious kind of movie that I would expect Sean to hate. It's over the top, and it's supposed to be over the top, and they're all giving it their over the top performances. Yeah. I mean, even like the family who you don't really give a shit about because they're not the star, they were good. Well, and to call it fun bad, I don't even think it's fair because there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a straight ahead Exorcist. I mean, there's no flaws really in it other than Russell Crowe's being fun, which you wouldn't normally think of an exorcism movie, but it's straight ahead. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's not even really bad. It's just like fun, straightforward. So that's what threw me off. If it was like over the top awful, that would have been maybe, I don't know. But it's good-ish.
good enough. It's worth watching. It is. It's definitely easy to consume, and all that's due to Russell Crowe.
I was comparing it in my review to when Orson Welles voiced the Transformer in the Transformers movie. It's like here he is. He's Orson Welles, and he's bringing all of his Orson Welles quality to that. And I just like this Russell Crowe here. It's like this material is so beneath his talent, and yet here he is elevating it with how great he is, and he's just bringing so much to it. I really loved that. I loved his performance. I think everything else in the movie is utter trash. I think all like the whole cop thing just kept going through my head because like they've stolen every cop movie trope and applied it to an Exorcist.
But they made it work
so hard when they called him in front of the Internal Affairs Bureau. I was just like, they're going to request his badge, and then he pulls out a fucking badge. I was just fucking rolling. Like he has an actual fucking badge.
But it's not like you're watching it as a regular person and being like, well, that doesn't make sense at all. They do it in a way that makes it make sense. So it's competent at the same time, which is what threw me off. But anyway.
I like competent horror movies that don't take themselves too seriously. And I think that's what, to me, this was. It was like, all right, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just have fun. Let's make a movie it has really good effects too. The right amount of gore. I liked the kind of stupid lore because, it's like, it was kind of like Dan Brown movie meets a cop movie meets The Exorcist. You know what I mean? There was enough of that like bullshit Spanish Inquisition lore that doesn't. I mean, nobody. Yeah, I like that shit because I'm like, people actually did this in the name of God.
Right.
Come on, you still believe this shit? Like that's. But it was interesting to me because that kind of stuff interests me. Like the how do people justify this kind of shit in the name of religion?
Oh yeah, I loved that. I loved that whole Spanish Inquisition thing. Not to spoil anything, but they find out, or Russell Crowe finds out basically that the devil was the one behind the Spanish Inquisition, so the church can go, "Aha! It wasn't us."
Yep, he lets the church off the hook.
That's great. That's good stuff. I was gonna make another. I think I lost it. Damn it. Oh, that's what I hate about the Conjuring movies is asking me to take bullshit like this seriously is such a waste of time, especially when it's coming from such bullshit con artists as the Conjuring people. Like, fuck those people. I can't take them seriously. Don't ask me to. Make this movie.
Yeah, I don't mind when they do it seriously. And I thought the first Conjuring was excellent. But after that, it kind of went downhill. But you hated The Exorcist too, Sean, so.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys all, I also was trying to prepare what I was going to say, and then for you to come out and say it was a fun bad, I'm like, so I can't even, argue with Sean, because I was going to say how the director is far from an artist and more of a carpenter. You fucked up my whole time. Let's move on to Renfield. I'm going to step away for a second. I'll be right back, but you guys go ahead and keep going as we talk about Renfield.
Renfield stars Nicholas Hoult as the title character Renfield. He is the assistant or familiar of Dracula. Has been for years, and dating back to apparently the original movie, which they've retconned into this movie kind of in a fun way. Nicolas Cage is Dracula. He's narrowly survived a death over the last couple of decades and is nursing himself back to health in a New Orleans hospital where Renfield has sort of rediscovered his conscience and kind of wants to get out from under being, Dracula's food getter. And of course, the draw here is seeing Nicolas Cage as Dracula. And the reason that I think this movie suffers is that there's not nearly enough of Nicolas Cage as Dracula. Like, you promised me Nicolas Cage as Dracula, you better damn well deliver me plenty of Nicolas Cage as Dracula. And while I enjoyed this movie, I wanted more Nicolas Cage as Dracula. I wanted him doing silly, over-the-top shit. That's what the trailer promises. It's what the movie promises simply by casting Nicolas Cage as Dracula. And if you don't deliver that enough, it doesn't work for me. And so I'm torn on this one. I do like it, but like the whole subplot about the drug dealers and Aquafina, like I like those actors. I love those actors, but like I just wanted to see more of what Nicolas Cage was doing. Anytime Nicolas Cage was off screen, I'm like, what is Nicolas Cage doing right now? Like, what is Dracula doing right now? And Dracula is basically just killing whoever he can get his hands on so he can heal himself. And I'm kind of like, I want to see him just monologue at people and come up with crazy shit. So I like this movie, but I'm torn. I wanted more Nicolas Cage.
You want me to go, or do you got it, Jeff?
Go ahead.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you. It reminded me of kind of like Shaun of the Dead with Nicolas Cage in it, to the point where it's like people are loving it too much and it's starting to bother me a little bit. The few people that saw it are raving about it, but it was fine. It was funny enough. It was good enough. When Nicolas Cage was on, it was amazing. But at the end of the day, I was just kind of like pulling my phone out in the theater and playing games and looking back and forth. I wasn't in love with this movie like I wanted to be, and I don't think the marketing campaign was great either. I think we mentioned that last week.
Oh, yeah.
So in the end, it was fine, but that's kind of the best I can give it. Jeff?
Yeah, I was so fucking sick of the original trailer for this movie, that I almost didn't want to see the movie at all. I just was like, if I have to see that stupid trailer, and then they didn't even use half the lines from the trailer in the movie. I mean, if I had to sit through the trailer, I should be able to see them in the movie. Like, where's the Postmates for Dracula line? What I enjoyed about it was, Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage was playing Nicolas Cage. Like he was just like that. His over the topness that he plays sometimes, and I liked that. As she ages, Shora Agdashlu, I can't understand what she's saying anymore. So I really had to really listen when she was on screen. I like Aquafina, but I didn't care for her, the whole backstory that she had. I didn't see the stakes with her sister when her sister was in danger. I just thought, like I did say earlier, the tone of this just shifted from romantic comedy to horror movie to, action movie, just too much on a dime for me. Like, I would have liked to have seen it start off as one thing and kind of morph slowly. I really, really liked the way that they incorporated the original Dracula with the, there's tweaking it so that you see their faces instead. Ben Schwartz, he always bugs me. So when he was on screen, I kept I'm like, oh God, I wish this was Joe Keery from Stranger Things. You know what I mean? I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. I loved the gore. I mean, the gore was so fucking over the top that I had to love that. And it wasn't like with Mafia Mamma where it didn't belong. It absolutely belonged here. And the fact there was so much of it, I was really on board with that. I don't know. It just didn't hold together as well as I wanted it to. And I think that's because they could, are we a comedy? Are we a drama? Are we a horror movie? are we horror comedy would have worked too, but it was just too much kind of bouncing around like a pinball machine.
Especially, I mean, there's a scene early on with Cage's sort of modern introduction where you see him in all this incredible gory makeup, and it's so good, and he is monologuing like crazy, just doing this amazing Nicolas Cage thing, and I was entranced by that, like looking at just his ears like sliding off his face, and his face is pulsating with like his skin trying to come back together. It's awesome. And I loved that. And he's monologuing while he's doing it. And he's got his arm around Nicholas Hoult. And it's really gross. I loved it. And I wanted something more like that. I wanted more of their relationship. Like I said, I just wanted more Cage just doing Nicolas Cage. Especially, we didn't get to see enough of him after he heals. Like, we're spending all this time with like these drug dealer characters. And it's like, enough. Just what is Dracula doing?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it have been great to see, like, you start off in the 1930s and you kind of, they gave you just enough of the movie, the original, that I kind of wanted to see them, I don't know, like, rights or whatever, but, go into, like, they could have incorporated Son of Dracula or that kind of stuff, and then had, the Hammer era of Dracula, which I thought that his look really modern look really kind of brought that to life. But to see him, in the 60s and see them up until now, I also think that if you wanted to drive home the fact that, Renfield lost his entire family, show that. Show his wife as a really old person, show his son and his grandkids, that he never got to really meet. What if the mob family was his family, and that happened because he wasn't around to raise his son? Just all this other stuff that I think you could have done. I don't think it needed to be a whole modern day movie. I think throughout the years would have been great.
They had actually had a plan to do the Hammer thing, and it turned out to be too complicated. It was hard enough doing they had a bit of a time constraint, so they had a hard enough time doing the 1931 thing that they do, and they felt that they just didn't have the time and the capability to make the Hammer stuff look good, but they did plan on doing that.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they had an idea in mind when they made it, or when they wrote it, and they're ready to go. Then they got Nicolas Cage on board, and then they kind of like, all right, we got to do this fun stuff with Nicolas Cage. So they changed from the original idea, but they didn't go full Nicolas Cage either. So it kind of met somewhere in the middle, and it just, I don't know. I haven't read a Harry Knowles review in like 10 years, and this is the first one I ever, for whatever reason, it popped up on Facebook or something like that, and he just loved the fuck out of it, and I don't get that at all. But there's a lot of things
I forgot about him completely. That's
I know.
crazy.
I didn't know. I haven't been to that website in forever. Does it still exist? I don't know.
I get that kind of
I watched The Faculty recently, so he was in that, so I never completely out of mind.
All right. Our classic this week is the 1931 Dracula.
Dracula, yes, starring Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula. He's moving to London. He's selling his castle in Transylvania and moving to London. He needs Renfield to do this business deal for him, and he, of course, enchants Renfield to be his familiar, his assistant. And he comes to London and encounters a group of rich people living nearby, and he falls in love with at least all of the women. I think Dracula pretty much falls in love with every woman, but he falls in love with everybody, really, because he just wants their blood more than anything. He just wants their blood. And he's a very seductive, weird, creepy, but also kind of sexy guy that women kind of go for because he's so mysterious and foreign. And Lugosi is so great at that, being mysterious and foreign. His accent is brilliant. And the choice to light him and light his eyes, especially Carl Freund, does an amazing job of creating this character nearly as much as Bela Lugosi does. directed by Todd Browning, which is probably one of his most oddly conventional films when you compare it to something like his most personal film, Freaks. But I think it's a terrific piece of direction. I think it's an underrated piece of direction overall. For a movie this short to contain so many iconic moments and iconic scenes, and for it to exist as it does today, seeming like a movie that could exist today, it's really impressive. I mean, the way that he evokes, Dracula, even the bat on a string looks great, considering the time frame. Just that iconic, everything that Bela Lugosi does as Dracula, he completely replaces the Dracula of the time. Max Schreck was, he was the original sort of what they were considering of the Dracula character, and he comes in and just creates it all in his own image, and everything after Bela Lugosi is what Dracula is, and that's pretty impressive to do that in one fell swoop like that in 1931. This movie is great. It's still great. It was great then. It's great today.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, from Sesame Street to Count Chocula to the Scooby-Doo. I mean, all that stuff, you don't even have to have seen this movie to have seen this movie. But because of all that stuff, it makes it very watchable. And because it's a great film on top of that, a 1931 movie being watchable today for a regular audience, too, not just film snob like Sean. I think... I really think anybody could sit and watch this and enjoy it. Even the lack of stakes, you still buy into it, but I don't know. It's an easy watch. It's easy to consume, and it's just really well done. And so, I mean, clearly iconic. But this is kind of the highlight of my weekend, movie wise.
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly frank. I didn't watch it because I've watched it 50 times. I don't need to, I didn't need to watch it necessarily for the review. A few things that have always stuck out to me is it took me years to realize that the theme at the beginning of Dracula is Swan Lake. About 6 months ago, a year, I was listening and I was like, oh, they're playing the Dracula theme. And I'm like, oh, it's Swan Lake. I'm a fucking idiot. And then, of course, the last time I watched this was just a couple months ago. I saw that it was Swan Lake in the credits. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I just never paid attention. This has got this, like you guys have said, the tropes that have been set up for every vampire movie since are just, it's just, a vampire casts no reflection. A lot of the stuff from the Universal monster movies has become lore that wasn't necessarily lore for vampires before, like a vampire casts no reflection. That was never a thing until, this book that this was based on. This is also an example of the book. The movie is better than the book, because I don't know if you guys have ever read the book. It's told in a series of letters. It's worth listening or reading to. But God, Bela Lugosi was just, think about it. It's almost 100 years ago. And who is the very first person we think of when we think of Dracula? Bela Lugosi.
Mm-hmm.
That characterization alone, if you've never seen this, is worth watching just to see where the template for every screen vampire comes from. The brides of Dracula, they just, the slinkiness of them, and the fact that an armadillo is like supposed to be scary. And then you think about it, you're like, okay, 1931, how many people really knew what an armadillo was? They're sitting, they were born and raised in New York City or London. What the fuck is that? That's an armadillo. They're all over Texas, I'm like, but just the little things that they did, like the little touches, the lighting, like you talked about where they're just lighting his eyes, and that that just kind of evokes a feeling in everybody. I mean, because the character of Dracula is just sexy, and that's kind of, the modern day vampire as a kind of a sex god or goddess, depending on which movie you're watching. It all starts with that, and I can't even talk about how much I love this movie without mentioning the Mexican version. Have you guys seen that?
I've read about it.
No.
Okay, it's if you get the Blu-ray or whatever, it's kind of the bonus. It's exactly the same movie, just in Spanish with different actors, and they filmed it at night. When all the actors from this version would go home, they would bring in the Spanish actors and film it in Spanish with different, and it's just, I actually, for a while, kind of preferred that one. Just the way that everybody looks and the characterizations. I like the over the topness of it a little more, I think. It's kind of like watching a telenovela, but Dracula. Those are always heightened, like a soap opera or whatever. Check that out if you get the chance, but I can't recommend the original Dracula enough. I just think everybody should see it, especially if you consider yourself a movie fan, even if you're not a horror fan. You got to see this movie because there's so much richness and lushness to the setting of it, and
it's pretty incredible. So many Hollywood people have tried to update Dracula and change Dracula and make Dracula their own, and they've all failed. They can't take it away from Bela Lugosi. It goes back to him. It goes back to him, and that hair and those eyes and that cape and that suit. That's going to be Dracula. And when you can try and change it, I think the closest anybody came to taking it and making it their own was Christopher Lee in the Hammer film. The closest conception of that character. And then I would say Blackula at least gave a little bit of a twist, but kept a lot of the conventions. But at least in terms of trying to modernize it, it did that. But every other time that somebody tries to change vampires, it just feels wrong. Like the stupid Twilight movies, vampires can stand in the sun and they shine like diamonds. Fuck off. It's such a stupid addition to the vampire lore. That's not necessary.
Twilight movies are classics, and I will not have any slander about them on our show. Just kidding.
Shut up, Green. I just assumed she's a Twilight fan.
That's Nancy Grace for you.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible that Bela Lugosi remains that iconic. Go ahead, Bob.
I mean, I was just gonna. I don't really. I enjoy some of the foreign horror vampire movies that have come out, but they're not even trying to. They're just kind of doing their own little small thing. I've said it before, but one thing that I think really works for this, and you mentioned the lighting and everything, is the lack of resources that we have today. Cause you to be more creative and more, artistic. And today you just throw money at everything. I mean, even the one in the 90s, I'm sure I've never seen that one. Is that Coppola that did it? I don't even know who.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fun. I have no idea. I've never seen it, but just a lot of money goes into a production like that to try to make a lot more money. And then you're taking shortcuts and you're not doing anything authentic, and it doesn't, it's impossible to be iconic after that. But I don't know. It's a fantastic watch and very easy to get through. And you've kind of seen it already without seeing it anyhow.
True. I mean, to your point, Bob, though, I think Coppola's Dracula is kind of the proof to what you just said about how the limitations actually make the original so much better, because he has every resource possible in that movie. I don't think is very good. I think it's very incredibly broad and over the top, and they're trying very hard to create their own Dracula and coming up with, I think coming up very, very short.
The best thing about Coppola's Dracula is the red armor that he wears.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you know, they're trying to make it. They were trying to make it as close as they could to the book, but really, the only way they could have done that is if they were just sitting reading letters to each other. You know, it's more of a romantic movie than a horror movie, and even then, it's not that great.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was just gonna say Coppola's everything that he's done that's good is very bloated. He does bloat better than everybody else. However, he has a lot of shit too.
Yeah.
So that makes sense that the new one would be kind of overcrowded and whatever. Yeah, see, it wasn't a very good point. You could have just kept going and you didn't.
I was, oh gosh, where was I going? I had something and now it's gone.
And I ruined it with Coppola making bloated movies.
I've never seen The Godfather. Bringing it back to Mafia Mamma. What, Sean?
I'd like to see her get eaten by a vampire.
That character, not Toni Collette.
I was going to say her play a vampire. Her and Nicolas Cage together doing over-the-top bullshit. That'd be fun.
Toni Collette has a lifetime pass because of Hereditary, so that's fine.
And The Sixth Sense and Muriel's Wedding.
Never hold anything against her because of that, but the Mafia Mamma is really bad, though.
Now, if you were okay, we should start doing this with the classic. If you could cast that movie with today's actors, who would it be? Who would you cast as Dracula? That's not Nicolas Cage.
I actually wouldn't. I think oh yeah. I actually think like Cage like completely overwhelms the role, and he just brings a different expectation to it. Not that I didn't love his performance. I did love his Dracula, and I love the idea of his Dracula, but it's not Lugosi's Dracula. If you could do it like exactly as it is.
Yeah, how about this? Like Gus Van Sant's shot-for-shot remake of the original Dracula. Go.
Vince Vaughn.
I would say either Christoph Waltz or Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, I hate Ben Mendelsohn.
Okay.
But you're not supposed to like Dracula, so he's the
No,
villain.
you're supposed to. You're supposed to want to fuck Dracula, no matter who you are.
What?
That's the idea.
I don't find.
Yeah.
I don't find.
He seduces everybody.
I don't
particularly charming, like super charming.
I don't know. Maybe like an Oscar Isaac.
He has to like trick people. He's like enchanting people with his mental powers. That's how he fucks people. He's not charming or attractive.
Young Bela Lugosi could fucking get it. Have you ever seen him?
I'm talking about the Bela Lugosi and Dracula.
Well, I'm just saying, like I'm like, okay.
I don't know anything about young Bela Lugosi. I'm talking about the Bela Lugosi I saw in Dracula. He's not. I
might still let get 85-year-old Robert Redford get it after seeing some of his early work. Just as a pass,
Right. I was saying the only way that this Dracula gets anybody is because he's mesmerizing them with his eyes. Like he's not charming. What is Dracula's end game? Like, what is it that he's trying to do? I mean, he's just trying to get blood, right? But why didn't he just do it? Like he could kill everybody in front of him. He kills everybody on the boat. So what's his end game with when he's playing around with everybody, like the Harkers and whatnot?
If you keep pulling the strings, you're going to take the fun out of it.
Well, no, you know what though? Here's the thing: it's like if you're immortal, you have to do something to amuse yourself.
That's what I was getting at. Yes,
what's the point?
Going to go to exactly that because I did have an answer to my own question, but thank you for that.
What's the point if you're not going to amuse yourself? Everybody you ever knew is dead.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something, and if you're going to like drink their blood anyway, you might as well seduce them and do all that. So,
I think Dracula is playing with his food. I think that's the whole thing, and it's really a movie about hubris, about his ego, that leads him to a place where he ends up being killed, essentially seemingly killed by Van Helsing. And part of this also is just a really clever construction of this plot. Because I was talking about another movie where the plot just completely lets down what otherwise is a very good movie, which we'll talk about next week. But this week, this movie has such smart construction because everybody seemingly is drawn in by Dracula. Everybody who he wants to draw in, he draws in, until you get to Van Helsing, and then Van Helsing resists him, and it's like that puts over the strength of Van Helsing and Van Helsing's convictions about who he is and about this the strength that he carries opposite to Dracula. It makes him a worthy opponent that he's able to resist him that way, and that's a very simple thing, but it's just very smart construction to do it the way they did it, where everybody's seduced by him except this one guy who's able to resist him.
And Van Helsing being an academic and having studied all of this, that's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a template for the serial killer being taken down by the FBI agent who studies his type.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of feeds into that, the mind hunter of it all. And he's, he's John Douglas or he's Clarice Starling, and Dracula is
right.
Hannibal Lecter. That kind of, that dynamic, the tension that you have to have between the two, and will he succeed or won't he? Yeah, it really comes through with these two.
Absolutely. It's really smartly constructed. It's really cleverly plotted. People have pointed out, like what I said before about the seeming lack of plot, but really the plot is just that Dracula is bored. He's looking for something to do. He's hungry, but he doesn't want to take his meals all at once like he could if he wanted to. And the idea that he's just toying with people is very interesting. I think Cage could have played that. I think Cage could have played something like that, where he chooses a group of victims that happen to be like Renfield's circle. Now in this modern age, Renfield has built up a friendly circle, and Dracula sort of insinuates himself into it, and it's all very weird and awkward because he's Dracula. But he's also using his mesmerizing powers on people to draw them in, and Renfield's just like, what? He's Dracula, stay away from him. You could play a whole thing where Cage just does this old school Dracula in a modern setting, and that's the movie, with him sort of toying with people before he decides whether or not he's going to eat them, and Renfield has to decide if he's going to stop him or not. That's a far better movie than what Renfield is, and it's just making me mad now that they didn't do that.
Yeah, playing with his food, that's a good way of saying it. And he's also think of it, if he sees a beautiful woman, he wants to make her immortal so she'll be with him forever, like the brides at the beginning of the movie,
Yeah, that's another thing that Coppola overdid, was trying to make Gary Oldman into this grand, romantic, tragic anti-hero. That just didn't work for me. It was too overblown. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was rude, but
Bela
Gary
Lugosi
Oldman is best when he plays a dirtbag.
Yes. Anything else on Dracula before we move on?
It's incredible. Everybody needs to see it.
I just picked up the NECA Dracula figure too.
And somehow, as great as Dracula is, the Mummy and Frankenstein and
Invisible Man,
the Frankenstein sequel are better than Dracula. As good as Dracula is.
Oh, okay. You scared the shit out of me. I was going to have to reach through this screen and beat the shit out of you.
For me, the Mummy is number one, followed by the Frankenstein sequel, then Frankenstein, then Dracula. Bride of Frankenstein. Thank you. I was trying to think of that one. Bride of Frankenstein is fucking brilliant.
Invisible Man's really good too.
Yeah. My favorite is Bride of Frankenstein. Dr. Pretorius. We should really do like a Patreon show and talk about all the Universal monsters, because it just, the Bride of Frankenstein. It's like, oh, his character is one of my favorites in all of horror movies. Just the kind of sissy madman like me.
And what that one's too is like it's the director essentially inserting himself into the film, like he's creating the movie as he goes. It's really genius like that. It's highly meta, and nobody at the time even knew what meta was.
Yeah, we'll talk about all the Universal sometime.
Yeah, The Mummy is still my favorite though.
All right.
I'll have to.
1993, we have Boiling Point and Benny and Joon.
I forget what Boiling Point is. We did not watch that for the 93 podcast. We watched Benny and Joon.
With Wesley Snipes?
Boiling Point, yes. Not Benny and Joon. Wesley Snipes was not in Benny and Joon.
I would have loved it.
There are no black people in Benny and Joon. It's an incredibly white movie. But it's not a terrible movie though. It was an interesting conversation with Amy and MJ, which hopefully whenever Bob gets a chance, that'll go out for people.
It'll be out this week.
And it's a weird movie. So Johnny Depp plays a guy who likes to hide in trees, and he likes to pretend that he's Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin or some silent movie hero. Aidan Quinn and Mary Stuart Masterson, is it? I can't remember. Mm-hmm. I get them confused. Those 80s women. She's got a pretty serious mental disorder. Aidan Quinn is her brother. He's trying to keep her safe, but also trying to live a life. And those two things are kind of at odds at all time, because she runs off everybody who he hires to try and take care of her. Then they bring in Johnny Depp almost by accident when they win him in a poker game. It's true. They win his character in a poker game, and he comes to live with them. And he and Mary Stuart Masterson start to fall in love and develop a relationship. And of course, Aidan Quinn's a little uncomfortable with this idea, because he's expecting her to explode at any moment, because she does have schizophrenia. She can manage it with medication, but she does have it. And the movie never says schizophrenia. It never talks about it openly, but we can see the signs. And that, in terms of how you construct a movie about mental illness in that way, where you're not, terrifying people with the idea of schizophrenia, it's actually very fair and very empathetic to her character in that way. And it gives her sort of a base reality in which you can understand how this person could live a life, even as they do have this very serious mental illness. The romance is very sweet. Somehow Johnny Depp pulls this off. This weird character who should be incredibly twee and should be incredibly irritating. And I was definitely kind of irritated, by him early on, with the introduction of him like hiding in a tree, and then him just being a jerk kind of. But then he grows on you the way he grows on these characters. He has some very funny moments where like he goes to get a job at this VHS rental store, and he walks in and he grabs the help wanted sign, and he walks up to the counter. He says, "I'll help." It's just, he delivers the lines so perfectly. It's so sweet. And he does that a couple times in the movie. And yeah, he's doing all this shtick, but the shtick kind of works because it kind of fits this character. He stays with this character. He stays with the idea and never changes it, and yet creates a believable scenario where he and this woman could be together. I really enjoyed it. Also, very early performance from Julianne Moore. I had no idea she was in this movie, and she's like the fourth lead. Weirdly enough, do you know who was initially sought for this? It wasn't Johnny Depp, or Mary Stuart Masterson. It was actually the first choices, and they were never going to get this. Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts were who they wanted for Benny and Joon. I know.
Yeah.
But then they changed it up, and so they had Woody Harrelson. Like, he was signed on to play the Aidan Quinn character. and he left this to go do Indecent Proposal. And to the point where they were so close with him that they had to sue him when he left. Laura Dern was actually cast in the Mary Stuart Masterson role and then quit when she was told that she was the third lead. Yeah,
I mean,
behind the scenes stuff.
All right.
I did not watch this.
Neither did I.
I just but trying to see the 3 movies that came out this week. April sucks. I'm sorry.
One
of my friends on Twitter goes, "How come there's no horror movies opening in May? Or no, there's no good horror movies opening in May?" I'm like, because every movie is coming out in fucking April. It's like, I don't know how we're gonna do it.
Every movie's getting out of the way of Guardians of the Galaxy, apparently.
Well,
we even didn't watch 2 movies that came out this week just due to time. What do we got next week? You sent me and I know Beau is Afraid. Obviously, we talked about that. The Evil Dead Rise. How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Chevalier. Whatever. And 1993.
Racist.
This Boy's Life and Who's the Man. Tell me you're watching Who's the Man. Please. We are watching Who's the Man in your honor.
Can I come over?
Yes, you can. You can totally come over.
You should watch a double feature. Just one of the guys and Who's the Man.
I made Josh and Sean watch Who's the Man. When we were done, Sean's just like, this is the most normal, basic movie ever. Why do you like this so much? I have no answer. I just memorized it.
It was like Bob lived through every fear ever of showing a movie that you like to people. Have you ever been through that, Jeff, where you're like, you've got to show a movie to somebody and they come away not impressed?
Black Christmas. If somebody sees Black Christmas and they are not impressed, that person is not getting anywhere near my pants. Whether they wanted to or not. I mean...
Well, I had it where you know how when you're showing a movie and then all of a sudden you realize it's not good? Like, I was showing somebody Rocky IV because I've grown up, it's like the best action movie of all time. In the middle of it, I'm like, oh my God, there is no plot to this movie. It's just him working out the whole time. This person's totally bored. It's 2002.
The worst is what we did to Josh, though.
When he brought us to Aliens.
Yeah.
That was, he had a girlfriend at the time who was making it that much more entertaining for us and more miserable for him.
We were not kind to the Alien movies, Jeff.
God, I love Alien movies.
I did before that weekend. And now I can't, it took me a while to...
So, okay,
you're welcome.
My take, we're not going to watch these together ever. I just refuse to. The first Alien is a masterpiece of horror movies. Okay, of horror sci-fi. It is everything about that movie is rewatchable over and over. As far as Aliens goes, the director's cut, you have to watch that, but you can. I kind of watch it up until they start going to space and she shows off that she can use the loader, and then everything off of that until she saves Newt. I don't really have to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I like the last scenes with where she's fighting the Queen. The whole army stuff, I'm not a big army movie fan, so that whole middle section, I could take it or leave it. But if you cut out, if you cut that out, I could just watch it all the way through. Alien 3, the producer's cut. I love that movie. I just can't not because of Sigourney Weaver mostly, and David Fincher's visuals. Alien Resurrection, it's fine. There's some fun stuff to it. I like the characters a little more than I do in Aliens, and a lot more than most of the ones in Alien 3. Don't make me ever watch the Alien versus Predator movies again.
Never. No, I won't watch. I never want to see Paul W.S. Anderson again in my life. Fucking monster. No, I think the problem that I have with the first two Alien movies is that we were sold a bill of goods about Sigourney Weaver being the baddest ass kicking babe in the world, and it's like she's a pretty normal chick
until the second half of the second movie.
Yeah, like she's relatively a normal person who's having a normal reaction to this. Like she's not a badass iconic hero like everybody keeps painting her. She's a normal person having a normal reaction to a terrifying situation.
Borderline damsel in distress. I mean,
yeah.
And then like midway through the second one, she flicks it on to this action hero. But I don't know. That was
so. In Alien, to me, she's your like prototypical final girl.
Yes.
In that it's a haunted house movie, and she survives the haunted house through. She's the only smart character, and you find this out early. I knew she was going to be the final girl when I saw it. I saw it as a kid, and then I saw it again years later. I hadn't watched it in a long time until college, and I watched it. And when she says, "No, Ash can't, don't let them in. They can't break quarantine," and he overrides her, I'm like, she's the only smart one. She's the one who knows that, they've got to stay outside for 24 hours or whatever. That's when I knew that she was the smartest one in there, and the fact that it was written for a man and she just kind of just went with it, I'll never ever talk bad about that. So
I will say Alien's my favorite of all of them, but it's still not. Yeah, it just wasn't. Like
I think for both of us, Bob, I think we both didn't have that. We both grew up with Sigourney Weaver as a movie star.
Right.
We grew up with the framing of Ripley being, this badass ass-kicking hero. That's the framing that we come to the movie as, and then you're watching the movie and you're not getting her like, she's not beating up the aliens or anything like that. She's escaping like a normal person would. And I think when you create this frame around her that isn't what the character is, it's not fair to the movie and it's not fair to the audience.
But I also think you and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you did, but I did not watch this movie a lot. Like maybe one time as a kid. Like, my brother watched it over and over and over and over again. Clearly Josh did too. I don't know if you were the same way, just kind of one and done and moved on. And so,
I saw it one time, and moved on from it.
And I think that plays a role too. There's no nostalgia for me, so I'm trying to find Josh's nostalgia while we're watching it, and it's not there for me. And that added to the fun, unfortunately for him. All right, you guys want to run Dracula through Flick Chart?
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
Let me see if I can find it. Done this how many times, and I struggle every time. Unfortunately, I may have to go after we do that, if that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah. That's fine.
Unless it just takes like 3 times.
It's possible. We never know what's going to happen.
Dracula, Be Kind, We Rewind.
Dracula,
The Fast and the Furious.
Dracula, but it's close. It's close for me.
It sounds like one movie. Dracula for me as well. Dracula, Notting Hill.
Dracula, but I love Notting Hill.
Dracula, Harry Potter, and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Ooh, Dracula versus Dracula on the poster.
I'll take Dracula, but again, I like that Harry Potter movie.
That's my first favorite Harry Potter movie, but Dracula is...
Yeah. Dracula or The Breakfast Club?
Dracula.
Yeah, I recently rewatched The Breakfast Club, and it's good, but it's, why does Ali Sheedy have to give up who she is for
Yeah.
Jock?
I don't like The Breakfast Club. Dracula, Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Dracula doesn't have Tom Cruise in it.
I'm going to have to, only due to recency bias, go Dracula. I haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut since 1999, and at the time I didn't like it. So someday we'll have to make that a classic. Dracula, 12 Years a Slave.
Dracula.
Yeah, 12 Years a Slave is a really good movie, but I don't know if I could watch it again.
Right.
No.
Dracula, Chasing Amy.
Chasing Amy.
Dracula.
It's Chasing Amy for me, but I think a lot of it's just due to the fact that I'm just the right age for when it came out.
Yeah.
Dracula, Psycho.
Psycho.
Yeah, Psycho. It's like my children, but how do you choose your children? Psycho.
Dracula, Jaws.
Jaws.
Dracula.
I'm gonna go Jaws.
I love Jaws. Jaws is great.
Dracula, A Star Is Born.
Dracula.
Dracula.
I'll go A Star Is Born. Number 19 on our list. Star Is Born is number 20.
Dracula is probably a little too high, but yeah, that's fine. That's a fine spot for it. I think, like I said, I still think that the Frankenstein movies and the Mummy, Boris Karloff's Mummy, I think are still better movies than Dracula.
You want to run The Mummy and Young or The Bride of Frankenstein in real quick?
I don't think you guys have the proper framing for The Mummy. You need to watch it again.
Well, we watched it on the podcast not that long ago, so I remember how good it was. But that's fine. We can wait.
Let's make each of the Universal's classics at some point.
We can do that.
All right.
All right. That is our show. Sorry I had to cut Flick Chart short. Did I say that right?
All right.
Anyway, we will see you guys next week for Ari Aster. We have not picked a classic yet, but I'm okay with the one you had, Sean. It just might be a lot of work. Persona.
Jeff, did you have a thought? Or?
I was actually talking to a friend of mine about having to go back and watch the Evil Dead movies because I haven't watched them in a long time, and I want to see if it makes me like Army of Darkness any better, even though I was going to watch it after you guys talked about it on the 93 show. But just let me know. I'll try to squeeze anything in this weekend while I'm in Chicago.
Yeah, I guess if we were doing a great show, I would agree with you, Sean. Persona would be ideal, but there's only so many hours in the day for the weekend for me this time.
Fair enough.
Sorry. All right. That sounds good. I'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.